Hello, BookTube. This is bookshelf tour number 2, or book tour, or library tour, or whatever you want to call it. Shelf tour. Yesterday, I did the first one. This is a reprise of I think started the first time I did it. The only time I did it, I think, was in 2017. So the library's changed, the home library's changed since then. And yesterday I was in and out of frame. Trying to do this a little different, but like I said yesterday, we live in a small cottage with a lot of books, and so bookshelves are where there's no windows or where there's no heat vents and where they're convenient to reach, and it is comfortable when you're walking around to grab a book. However, it can be a bit of a challenge when you're trying to do a video because I'm using an iPad. Don't really have a mount for it. First time I did it, I used an iPhone, and I had a little stand, so it went a little better and the layout was different. So we'll do the best we can. I'm going to try this sitting down, so you may see me reaching. I moved the chair a little bit away from the window. I know there's a little glare from that window. I actually might be able to get rid of some of that. Yeah, I can get rid of some of that. And actually, you'll see some of I always do that wrong. Some of these over here. Where I'm going to start. So we did this first section here, Gibbon's Decline and Fall, Dryden translation of the Parallel Lives of Plutarch, some King Arthur, Venerable Bede, Thomas Becket. So I'll start reaching over here for some more, and we'll just go through them a little bit. A lot of them are Folio Society, and we did have some comments yesterday about Folio Society, who I've collected for a very long time and enjoy very much. But they have changed. I mentioned that I don't collect them like I used to. The focus, as you'll see when we start getting into some of these books, on the newer Folio is, as one commenter noted, a little more popular type of book than it used to be. Some of these are a little more idiosyncratic and, to me, a little more fun, and then the prices change quite a bit. So, but I still love them. I still occasionally get some, and some of my favorite books are those. This section, again, Easton Press, Folio Society, that sort of thing. When we move on in the tour, I tend to put things in big subject areas. So you may see 4 or 5 videos in a row on music and music history and have no interest or have tons of interest. It just depends. And on fiction and by region or nationality or that sort of thing. And I'm not really going to label them so much. I'm just going straight through. But if you know you're on a run of something you don't like, obviously, you can skip ahead to the parts that you do. So, but this shelf is different because it's books roughly categorized, but mostly it's because of the editions. So, or sometimes the only way I could get the edition. And the first few will be like that. Here, let me grab the first one. And that's this here. This is a folio. Pretty standard looking design, pretty traditional. And this is the reminiscences. I can't speak today. Reminiscences of Captain Granow. Folio Society, London, 1977, edited and introduced by Nicholas Bentley. Now this is more of the type of thing that you would have seen from Folio back in the day. This is not going to be on your bestseller list, right? This is not the Dune or the Foundation they're doing now. It's not those types of things. And it was originally published in 3 volumes. And Granow was a bit of a dandy, Welsh, I believe. He was in the Peninsular Campaign, Waterloo, Wellington, and the Bonapartes are discussed. He was an expert shot, a little self-effacing for a dandy as a writer. And he didn't think he was he didn't think he was a great writer, let's put it that way. But he lived in fascinating times, obviously. That was the Duke of Wellington directing the Battle of Nivelle in 1813. So, and like Folio always has done, or at least as far as I know, some great period illustrations. So fascinating story, quite fun, quite well done. Not a volume you're going to see everywhere, which, like I say, was their forte, especially with British stuff that they've always been so wonderful with. And so this is what you're going to get this time, is me straining and groaning and stuff, trying to get to a volume. And this next one here is actually fairly well known because, here, I'll show you, it has nice covers there. This is Retreat from Moscow. And you're going to hear me mispronounce things all the time. I'm famous for it. The Retreat from Moscow, the memoirs of Sergeant Burgoyne, translated by J.W. Fortescue, introduction by Vincent Cronin, and this is London Folio Society, 1985. Again, the sort of thing they were doing, not something that is going to be on your bestseller list, but actually quite interesting. The Retreat from Moscow obviously was a bit of a disaster. This is a French fellow who was a sergeant. He ended up living into his 80s after this and moved up the ranks, and when political fortune favored his group, he ended up doing quite well in his life. You'll often see this referenced in works on that period. So this is a nice little volume to have, a good little read. This next one, oh yeah, I just put this up here. I don't need to struggle while I'm doing this. This next one, I don't have the slipcase for. An odd volume I found. Quite nice. And this is by Horace Origo. It's called The Merchant of Prado. It was first published in 1957 by Jonathan Cape. And this is 1957, 1963. So it has it's a reprint by the Folio, and this tells you about a merchant family. And let me see if they give you some. Here we go. Do some of the illustrations. So this will be a case where this is one I haven't read. I picked up used. I don't know what folios cost back then. I don't remember. They weren't anywhere not as expensive as they are now. But I actually probably picked this up for about $1. And if you're a collector, you probably want the slipcase, but I think it looks like quite an interesting book. Excuse me, I breathed in wrong. And so I'll get to this eventually. Some of these I have not read. I'll show you some others that I haven't. But I grabbed it because, what is it, a Renaissance or whatever, merchant diary form in the most part. I'm not sure, but, it's a study so that we can see that part of life. So, Lorenzo, trade at home and abroad. I mean, you get the ship here, so I'm always interested in that stuff. In this case, it's slave ships, and then below it is an image of a guy keeping accounts. So, good background stuff, I'm sure. If anybody's read it, let me know. But the sort of thing Folio used to do, and not a volume that in its original edition I'm likely to ever see, so. Then a really pretty one here. This is the Pastons, a family in the War of the Roses. And this is basically their letters, right? This is edited by Richard Barber. And a fascinating period in history. So fun volume. This is just beautifully done. So again, never your best seller. I may be wrong about that, but I would think. And the sort of thing, like I say, 1981, that the Folio Society was doing back then. Isn't this cover gorgeous? There, get my big old paw out of the way. And this one is a little bit of a, again, not, I don't know if they do this now, but this was a really odd little book. Again, very pretty. And we have Flora Tristan's Peregrinations. You'll love my pronunciation, right? I also talk like I'm talking through gravel sometimes, and I apologize. It's just the way I am. So this is a young woman, supposedly has, well, she comes from a very rough background in the way that, you know, her father, but she was an illegitimate child, was from the nobility. He dies. The kids aren't taken care of. The relatives that she has in Peru that are supposedly descended from the Aztec kings, and I would think more likely the Inca. Who knows? But anyway, these stories of families she's heard, you got to take with a grain of salt. She lives a pretty reckless life, but her dream's always to get to the Americas, and this is her book. Fascinating. A young woman's trial and tribulations. All sorts of crazy stuff goes on in this one. So again, sort of one of those interesting things Folio used to do. This one, on the other hand, is published later by Folio. And I remember being really excited when I got this. And this is the only edition of it I've ever read, so I started off with a really fun one to read. And this is Goethe, and this is Italian Journey, a very famous image there. And this was done in 2010, so much later than these other ones. And I just love this. You know, you have your section on from Verona to Venice, you know, it has Rome, it has all this stuff and his observations and stuff. Pretty famous book. Very, very easy read. I'm sure you can get it in other editions. But this was just a joy to read. The type is easy. The illustrations are impeccable, which is a Folio trait, right? Get you the really famous one there. I say that and then I'll never find it. But the type was just fantastic. And let me see if I can run into it. Well, I can show some of this. Yeah, I won't get to what I want, but so very much enjoyed this. I love the size of it. I'll give you some. I mean, that print is pretty easy to deal with, right? So this was one of their finer volumes, I thought. Maybe a little plain, but the illustrations are great. Great reading experience. I'd recommend it. The next one here is also a little later, and this is John Ruskin, The Stones of Venice. Very pretty. Another one that's a pretty good size, as you can see. It's sort of nice sitting here and just messing with it a little better than what I did yesterday. This is not. This has it edited and introduced by Jan Morris, the legendary travel writer and sometime historian, whose house in Wales, I read it, National Geographic, I think it was Directions, did a great little volume called A House in Wales. I need to get a copy. very bookish house. I think it was an old stable in Wales, stone, that she redid. And it's wonderful book. I need to find a copy again. I really enjoyed it. This was another one where you have the nice big print. You're not getting everything that was originally in his work, but enough for me. Just beautiful stuff. Ruskin's obviously a fascinating character, and very much in the air at the time with the intellectuals and the general public, actually, or the general educated public. So a hugely influential book, or set of books, and one I'm glad to have. This next one, actually I've got another one of his right over here, the Arabs in History, that I'm reading right now. I just started. I got an old Harper Torch paperback. This is Bernard Lewis, but this one's The Assassins. Here, let me show you what it looks like. This will be a little older too, I think. Here's the cover. It's spine. End papers. So the Assassins were a radical sect of Islam, as I said. This is 2005, so it's probably a little before the real change in the folios came, the change in direction. Nice photographs as always. So we're following what the hashish, the assassins, or whatever the whole story there is. So a good, solid, solid edition. Again, with the well-chosen type, the well-chosen photographs in this case. This next one, again, I told you there's some I haven't read. I have not read this one. I picked it up fairly inexpensively, $1 or $2 probably. And this is Chinggis Khan. Beautifully done. I do need to get to it. Translated, okay, it's the Golden Chinggis, History of Khan the Moguls. So it's the Golden History of the Mongols, Chinggis Khan. I did that wrong, sorry. Translated with an introduction by, I'm not even going to mess with the name, but the last name's Anand. Revised by Sue Bradbury. It's Folio Society, 1993. So again, an older. I feel funny saying older when it's 1993. I was already old in 1993. So this is one I need to get to. Type looks good. Illustrations again will be well chosen. So I'll probably learn a lot from this. End papers, beautiful maps. I love maps in books. Just absolutely love them if they're done well. Fiction or nonfiction. I was going through some of the Bernard Cornwell Sharp volumes with the maps, and yeah, that's great fun. So, and right next to it's another one I picked up at the same time that I have not read. It's got a little discoloration. Here's the box. This is the Silk Road. It says Folio there. The interesting thing is, I don't know if I can get you to see it, but this is silk. So it's wrapped in silk. It's by Francis Wood. It's Silk Road, which has a special place in my heart. I don't know if maybe I'll take a picture of it. I've got a piece of silk I was given by some Russian archaeologists, one, Anatoly Shtanko, about a Russian expedition, archaeological expedition on the Silk Road back in 1991 when I was in Russia. So it's always been a prized possession. And there you go. And I have other books on the Silk Road. This is Folio 2002, and this was, I was glad to pick it up. I need to get to it. Oh, this is pretty. So when you see volumes, right, and even though you know you're not going to get right to them, if it's a subject area interest, you better grab them, because the next time you go, they're not going to be there. In this case, they wouldn't have been. And you can get to them eventually, right? Now, the next one here is Memoirs of a Mercenary. And there's the cover. We sort of do one of these things. You get the greater picture here. And this is the memoirs of Master Johann Dietz, surgeon in the army of the Great Elector and barber at the royal court. And as you can tell, the woodcut, yeah, I don't know, that poor guy sitting in the chair is probably in trouble. So this is probably not a literary classic by any definition. And I think the manuscript history of it's a little spotty. But it is interesting, and the guy, Mr. Dietz, ended up going on having quite a long and prosperous life. It's an odd little thing. What year was it? Again, I'm not sure if Folio would do this now. In 1987. That translated by Bernard Mayle and edited and introduced by Mervyn Horder. Interesting. Does deal with travel and military and medical stuff, but again, I can't see Folio doing it. I may be wrong. I can't see him doing it now. This next one I can. This would be something they would still do. And this is Glencoe. Pretty plain slipcover, but quite a beautiful cover, huh? Look at that when you open it up. Isn't that nicely done? I should be giving credit to these artists, right? So this is John Preble. It's a well-known book. Engravings are by Harry Brockway. And boy, does he do a job, huh? I'll show you a few more. Of course, Folio Society. And this is the 5th printing of 2003. So there's no real super collectible value to this book. It's valuable to me. And nice volume to have. Let me see if I can get. I really like the artist here. I like the artwork. I hope they got. Yeah. I just think they look pretty neat. So, got a good index. So it has clan and family history. So it has plenty of bibliography. So pretty rough story, but a nice volume. And then I'm probably going to finish up with this because I got some big Eastern Press sets coming next. That may be, I don't know, you'll see there's some that, I mean, I got to decide if I go through each volume, or if I do, I'll go really quick next time. So this is Lord McCourtney, and it's the Embassy to China. Very pretty thing. Again, I'm not sure would ever been a bestseller. Love this. Look at that. This is a fascinating volume. And papers there. It's a route of the embassy through China, the voyage out and return, Chinese Empire at this greatest extent in 1760. I'll let you look at that again in case any of you are interested. Is it the same one on the back? Yeah. So the same end papers on the back. And this being the journal kept by Lord Macartney during his embassy to the Emperor, 1793 to 1794. This is London, the Folio Society, 2004. It has an introduction by Jonathan Spence. It's edited by J.L. Cranmer Bing. Illustrated with watercolor sketches made during the embassy by William Alexander, and they make this book. I mean, the time and the place is interesting, right? But this book is really, really beautifully produced. And I remember when I first got it, how excited I was. I didn't know anything about it at the time. And these sorts of things are always fascinating to me. And during the explorations, I've got one on seafarers, which are seafarer artwork. Very similar, some of it, from history. A lot of times you'll see these collections with like cat artwork from the naturalists and stuff on Pacific expeditions or Arctic or Antarctic. And I just love it. It's really neat to read about stuff like that from people who are really there. So there's a guy in winter dress. And this next section will be Lord McCartney's observations on China. So then you'll go right into manners and character. Obviously restricted to areas he was in himself. Let me see here. So here's somebody using chopsticks and another person smoking. Well, you imagine the first time if you weren't familiar with them, you saw chopsticks or something like that. That would be fascinating, right? So quite a neat, and again, I like the cover on this, neat edition. So there's some folios. That was the second part here. A little easier for me sitting down, so hopefully it's easier for you without me popping around all over the place. I'm not sure how we'll do some of the sets. I'll have to think about it. I want you to see them. Some of them have nice artwork in them, or in the case of that one back there. I never do that well, do I? That's the Winston Churchill biography. There's a lot of good photos and stuff from there. So until next time, thank you, BookTube.